CR101radio.com, podcasts, and more.
14. Fear and Man. November the 8th, 1955. Good morning, friends. In any discussion of fear, one of the most pertinent aspects of the problem is commonly omitted. People fear many things, but one of the most common sources and objects of fear is man himself. The fear of man is a common fear and a deeply rooted one. It manifests itself in a variety of ways. Men who are not afraid to die tremble with fear and work themselves into a lather over facing other men or standing up to them on some issue. The whole business of keeping up with the Joneses involves a deep-rooted fear of what people might say or think. I have heard people say, "I'd die if people knew this," and yet they had no hesitation in committing the acts which they feared to have exposed. This makes clear what is involved. Such people are not particularly troubled about what God declares or what their conscience requires, but they do fear public exposure. Thus, for them, the most important factor in life is not God, but man, not a clear conscience, but a clean social impression. What they worship, therefore, is not God, but man. A man's gods are basic to his life and existence, and what a man worships, that he fears to offend. And above all, it is basic that a man maintain continuous communion with his God. Since his whole life depends upon his God, he cannot live except in total dependence upon him and in communion with him. Now, if our God is man, or society, then we are afraid to offend him and afraid to do anything that might break our contact with him. It then becomes more important for us to meet the requirements of human society than the standards of the Christian God. It becomes basic to our life to maintain human communication at all cost, because our communion is with man, not the Christian God. We change our standards and our tastes with the fashions of the time because we dare not risk broken communion with our human God. Thus, if we are afraid of man, it is clearly because man has become our false God. We need to ask ourselves conscientiously, of whom am I truly afraid? Of God or of man? Whom do I fear to offend? Human society or Almighty God? If it is not Almighty God whose disfavour we fear most and whose broken communion we dread, then our faith is either defective and needs to be mended, or it is false and needs to be changed. Solomon long ago observed, "The fear of man bringeth a snare, but whoso putteth his trust in the Lord shall be safe." Proverbs 29:25. To worship the will of man is to put ourselves in a position of total insecurity and to establish ourselves in uncertain sand. But to fear God is to ground our lives in His unchangeable and omnipotent power and to have that glorious communion which turns our weakness into strength and our sorrow into joy. As Solomon further said, "The fear of the Lord tendeth to life, and he that hath it shall abide satisfied, he shall not be visited with evil." Proverbs 19:23. The evils that beset him shall not endure, and the final outcome of his life will be victory. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. Proverbs 9:10.